Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast hosted by two comedians who do not live in Chicago now, but love the Cubs nonetheless. I am one of them. My name is Adam Amawala. I am usually with Kevin McCaffrey. He was unavailable this week in mourning after the only game the Cubs lost in the past week was one that he attended. But I am here with our one of our regular guests and good friend, Ken Schultz. How you doing, Ken?
Doing well, Adam. How are you?
I am doing quite well, and I think part of that is because the Cubs no longer suck.
Yeah, it's the first time it's been a good week to be a Cub fan since end of October, would you say? No?
Yeah, basically. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the end of last season was so weird, it's like, I don't even remember. I've tried to, blot some of that out, but yeah, I mean, it's a good feeling right now.
As right before the midpoint of that Cardinal series, or Miles Michaelis shut him out.
Yeah,
that was the beginning of the losing 3 out of the last 4, and then the entire offseason of just utter devastation and Kafka-esque depression, and then the beginning of this season, which somehow took Kafka and added a layer of Stanley Kubrick level depression to it. So I guess what I'm trying to say. Boy, it's good to play the Marlins.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was geez, can you imagine if the Cubs had gotten swept in Miami? It would have really been like, okay, this is real life now.
It felt like the season was heading towards something like that, didn't it? Up until the point where Yu Darvish hit Lewis Brinson in the dick, and they finally decided, yeah, we're done with losing for a while.
That is the turning point of the season to this point. And I think that's a perfect thing to reference. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you felt, but when they were at 1-6 and then at 2-7, it's not like I was resigned to the fact that they were going to be bad, because I still didn't believe that. But there was this weird part of me that was like, well, I guess if this is the time that they start to be bad, I have to just be grateful for what's happened to this point and just try to accept it. I don't know.
It's a weird sensation to have, ever since the World Series winning season of 2016, that somewhere in the back of your mind, because you know how the cycles of baseball work, you know that eventually at some point there is going to come a bad season. And you're always kind of at the ready for, okay, is this where everything just kind of breaks bad and goes straight to hell? Right. And certainly you got just about every indication from that first week of this season, after again, the off season from hell, that this could well be the case. You had all different flavors of different kinds of losing, between the bullpen blowing several games, and then the defense deciding not to show up completely against the Braves, and then a couple days where the offense gets shut down. And I mean, you know as well as I do that that's the kind of pattern that bad baseball teams sometimes establish. And again, thankfully, they played the Marlins just in time and kind of figured out who they were in time to play the Marlins and the D-backs. So
yeah, and I mean, this has been a very soft schedule thus far, and that was the whole idea, is like, hopefully you can bank some wins early in the season, and that hasn't necessarily happened. But the Cubs are 500 right now. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon prior to the Dodger game, and they're 2 games out of first, and the team that's in first is not going to be there at the end of the season because it's the Pirates.
Right, and Chris Archer is eventually going to either hit a few more guys in the mound, or he's going to be Chris Archer. You're going to get some good performances out of him, but at the end of the season, you're going to go, I thought that there was a bit more there.
Right. Yeah, he's always been a bit of an enigma in terms of, like, he seems like his stuff is so good, but he doesn't, when you look at his stats at the end of most years, you're like, yeah, that wasn't a particularly good year.
Yeah. And it feels like that. I think we look at it too from the terms of, we traded Archer away for Matt Garza, which is still, no matter what, going forward, not the best trade, and certainly not a good trade for the 2011.
It's a little bit like our version of the trade that got us Hendricks for Dempster.
Yeah, but Hendricks, I think if you stack them up side by side with Archer, I think you would go Hendricks 10 times out of 10.
Yes, I would agree.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but because I prepare like mad for this, but yeah, that would be my presumption, is that Hendricks is having a much better career than Archer at this point. And kind of on the subject of Hendricks, it's nice to see the real Kyle Hendricks showed up on Friday, wasn't it?
Thank God, yeah. I mean, I think it's what we had all kind of been talking about in our ongoing group chat of, like, yeah, let's just have him be who he is. That would be nice. And he was all of that and more, I think, on Friday.
Yeah, until he shows us a year where he gets off to a slow start and then doesn't find the mechanics, I think it's pretty much safe to assume that even when he has a few bad starts in a row, that's because he needs to work on something, and he's both smart and aware enough to know what he needs to work on, and eventually will get to that point again where he goes and dominates. So, I mean, Kyle Hendricks is kind of the ultimate benefit of the doubt pitcher for me at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too, and it seems like maybe finally after all this time he's earned enough of Joe's trust that he's got a little bit of a longer leash.
Yeah, well, that's because Joe has taken his short leash and applied it entirely to Yu Darvish at this point. Not undeserved points, but I would say in the game on Saturday, it was a weird game on Saturday that Kevin was at, and he and I talked about this a little bit over text during the game. That Darvish did not start well at all. Like, to the point, gave up the back-to-back home runs in the first to two of the most underrated hitters in the game, and Eduardo Escobar and David Peralta. Yeah. And then the entire second inning, it seemed like he stepped off every single pitch between him and Wilson Contreras. Like, if he were wearing a Fitbit, it would have switched over to the blue screen of death at a certain point. and then all of a sudden, the third inning, whatever it was he needed to find, he found it. Because the third inning, from that point on through the fifth, he gave up, I think, a walk and a hit, and then ended up striking out 4 of the last 7 guys he faced. And the ball was doing things to the laws of physics the same way that Yu Darvish was doing things to Lewis Brinson's dick in innings 3 through 5 of that game. So,
is there a Twitter account that's at Lewis Brinson's dick? Because I feel like that needs to be
someone needs to set it up immediately. Yes, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what Twitter would let you get away with as far as an avatar pick, but yeah, I'd be willing to see what
I'll let you spearhead that one. So You heard it here first. Follow Ken's new burner account at Lewis Brinson's dick.
Yeah. So, tomorrow morning, Lewis Brinson's mom checks Twitter. My son's name is trending. I wonder what's. Oh my God. And then Darvish was at I want to say it was 83 pitches?
88 pitches when they pulled it.
Okay. Which is a fair number of pitches through 5 innings. But you could also conceivably say, he's probably got another 15 to 20 in him at that point. And
especially when there's not a run-scoring opportunity when they pitch it.
No, I mean, it was bases empty, 2 outs, and Mark Zagunis batting for the first time in a week against Zach Greinke, who was living in the corners the entire day. So yeah, I think part of this is that Joe is so committed to the idea that I need to slowly build Darvish's confidence up again to the point where he finally will feel that he is the pitcher he used to be. And he's so wrapped up and so, I mean, this is kind of like a typical Joe Maddon game plan. He's decided ahead of time that I'm going to give him 5 innings over and over and over again. That's all he'll get. And kind of, unless world-shaking events change my plans, that's what it's going to be. And he's not. I mean, this is what we know. This is the way Joe manages.
Well, it's a tough thing because it's like, on one hand you say, okay, this guy is a professional and very elite athlete and is getting paid a lot of money, so you have to take the gloves off at some point. Yeah. But I do understand that he hasn't earned Joe's trust. So It's not, I don't completely blame Maddon for that. And I think in a bigger picture sort of way, and I've seen a lot of people with this sentiment, and I agree with it, I think Maddon has done a great job of managing this team thus far this year. Mm-hmm. And ironically, that terrible beginning that made so many people say, like, oh, I wonder if his job is in jeopardy, I think the way they've come out of that just speaks to the kind of manager he is in terms of dealing with adversity, and he's shown that throughout his tenure with the Cubs.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think I inadvertently talked my way into a bit of a hot take by the end, and that's why I was kind of stammering and stuttering, trying to get myself out of Chris Russo territory. But I would definitely say that there's very little. I mean, I am a Joe Maddon guy for the most part, and there's very little in this season or last, for that matter, that would make you look and say, well, Joe's completely lost his touch. He's lost his ability with this group. And in fact, I would say he's much more the right guy to steer them through kind of those big storms that are going to come up like that first week of the season, when everybody was so focused on the idea of urgency. And you've got a manager whose entire raison d'etat, or however you pronounce it, sure he would try and also probably fail at pronouncing it. But his entire reason for being is going against the idea of urgency. That there's a reason why his motto is never let the pressure exceed the pleasure.
Right.
And if he's able to keep making that the focus for all of his teams, it makes sense that's why they're able to kind of get through stormy periods like the first week of the season.
Totally, and I think it probably speaks to the kinds of people that you have in that clubhouse as well, and just the fact that these guys have known each other for a long time, that core group. So let's do this. So obviously there's a lot of good stuff to talk about over the past week. Let's start with some of the bad stuff. We touched on Darvish a little bit. I think, obviously the fact that he's still going out there every 5 days and healthy, that you don't want to get to a point where just that in and of itself is a good thing, but it is a good thing. And I still, I think he still has some leash left before us Cub fans, even the more reasonable ones like us, start getting really annoyed. Like if we're still looking at the same Darvish that we've seen to this point in 2 months, I think it's going to be a very frustrating situation. But let's hope that he kind of puts it together. Let's talk about Brandon Morrow, because that is something that has happened over the past week that's obviously very disheartening. And if I'm being honest, I don't know that he throws another pitch in a Cubs uniform.
You shouldn't expect it at this point, honestly. Yeah, until he demonstrates, and it's really, and I say that like it's his fault, and it's not his fault. We both know this, but until you actually see him get out on the mound again and throw pain-free effectively in a major league game, yeah, at this point you have to assume that this is the pattern of how it's going to be. That even if he takes it back for a couple weeks and kind of starts everything up again once he stops feeling pain, you have to assume that on the way ramping up back to major league competition, he's going to feel something again, because that's the pattern. That's who Brandon Morrow is. That's what Kevin is fond of saying, and I think it's very accurate in this case. And so here's the thing about this particular situation, and it's making me harken back a little bit to trade deadline of 2016, where, as you recall, the Cubs, even at that point, had established a very good bullpen with Pedro Strop handling the eighth, Hector Rondon handling the closing duties. Mm-hmm. And at that point, Theo Epstein decided, well, no, I'm still getting ruthless. I'm going after this thing. I'm all in. And that's when they made the trade for Chapman. And all of us with anything resembling a conscience said, oh, fuck no. And but that was their decision that year, was that they were going to ruthlessly pursue the best bullpen possible. Mm-hmm. Now this year, as you are probably also well aware, there is an option out there that will also help you ruthlessly pursue the best possible bullpen, even though the current setup right now is better than we thought it was, given that Cishek has handled his job well. Strop, except for one pitch to Gerard Dyson of all people, has been great, as per usual.
That was the equivalent of the Brett Gardner home run in that interleague series a couple years ago.
Yeah, even more improbable, honestly, because Gardner will occasionally launch, but Gerard Dyson, for God's sake,
although he actually already has a walk-off home run this year, Gerard Dyson, I think, and it was on a hanging slider. I don't know a lot about him, but I was watching one of those like plays of the week things on MLB Network, and one of the plays was him crushing a hanging slider. So perhaps that's the book. That's the book on Dyson, is you don't hang a slider to him.
You get Dyson and Tommy La Stella on the same team, and that's the new Judge and Stanton. So.
Exactly. La Stella and Trout both with 6 home runs, I think, last time I checked, which is hilarious.
For 29 baseball. But so, despite the fact that they've got this good bullpen depth, which has managed to weather Brandon Morrow's injury history so far, you've got a Hall of Fame level closer just sitting there waiting for somebody to say, hey, here is a fair offer to come play for our team. The only thing standing in the way at that point is money. And so you're going to tell me that you're okay with being ruthless when you want to import one of the very worst humans in Major League Baseball today. But when it comes to spending Tom Ricketts' money, that's where you're going to suddenly draw the line? Like, I don't think that's acceptable.
Well, yeah, and as far as I know, Craig Kimbrel has not abused his wife, so that also is a plus point for Kimbrel. I think the thing about it is that from what I understand, and I've talked to my buddy Scott about this, the one who's the big Red Sox fan, because I asked him, are you disappointed that the Sox didn't re-sign Kimbrel? And his opinion was Kimbrel and his agent were just asking, I don't know if he has Boris, but we're just asking for a contract, an amount of years that is not realistic in today's landscape, which is that he wanted like a minimum of 6 years and $100 million. and teams didn't want to give it to him, and he didn't budge. So if that's what the Cubs have to give him, I don't think that they should do it. But if he's willing to take 3 years and 50, then yeah, find the money.
Yeah, the rumors on Twitter, at least, and again, that's Twitter, is that since the season has started, that he has lessened his demands a great deal, and that they're much more "quote unquote" reasonable than they were during the offseason. And I don't know, I would argue that the biggest contract for any relief pitcher for someone who is on a Hall of Fame track is relatively reasonable, especially given what we know about how much all major league teams are making. But nonetheless, if Craig Kimbrel is willing to offer you a discount, I mean, what is holding you back at this point?
But the thing is, even if they did sign him, I mean, if they signed Craig Kimbrel today, when is he going to be ready to pitch?
Yeah, but you could also look at it as, are you willing to trust that Craig Kimbrel will be ready to pitch sooner than Brandon Morrow?
Right. Oh yeah, and certainly that's the case because, like I said, I don't think that there's really any reason to expect that Morrow will be ready to go at any point this year. And even if he is, it wouldn't surprise me to see kind of like a Darvish situation at the end of last year where he finally gets to the point where he's making his last rehab start and then something goes wrong again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that would be absolutely perfect in terms of the pattern that Brandon Morrow has set, which again, not his fault.
No.
But that's just kind of, you have to pay attention to what you observe at this point and make a pretty educated guess based on that.
I mean, Brandon Morrow is a human being. He puts his pants on one leg at a time and hurts himself like the rest of us.
Yes, absolutely. Sky Point. Not sure pointed for there, but for his back.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a frustrating thing, and it feels like it gives the Cubs very little room for more injuries in the bullpen. Like if Cishek, and it wouldn't surprise me with the workload he had last year, if Cishek goes down or if Strop goes down, then you're really looking at a tough situation because, the bullpen has been very good of late and there are reinforcements coming. Cedeno is close to being ready. Barnett is close to being ready. Neither have pitched very well in their appearances in the minors thus far, but I mean, what are we going to have Kinsler closing? It's like he's been good, but it's just not what you want.
Yeah, Kinsler has closed, hasn't he? At a certain point,
he has. I don't know that he closed for the Nationals or maybe it was, who was it?
Was it with the Twins?
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, so he has done the job. I'll tell you the wild card in the bullpen at this point, oddly enough, suddenly has become Tyler Chatwood. Which would also give a little bit of huzzah and kudos in his direction. And really huzzah and kudos in our direction too for calling it.
Hell yeah!
Preview episode.
I'll give you full credit for that for calling Chatwood, and in the same breath, I will. This is less of a bold prediction because you said that Chatwood would have a signature moment this year. Did you not? Was that the claim?
I was calling a Jason Hayward walk-off grand slam for Chatwood. Some variation of that this year. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, 6 efficient innings, giving up 2 walks and 2 hits and no runs. That's as good as a Jason Hayward grand slam in my book.
Yeah.
For what Chatwood has been through.
Yes, absolutely. And it's going to be a game that everybody's going to remember, at least for the rest of this year. And kind of that he's at least had that one moment where it did come together and he was able to show us what he's capable of doing. So
yeah, I mean, him closing it's not insane. It's just that with the history of walks,
right?
The first time if that were to ever happen, the first time he comes into a game and walks the leadoff hitter in the 9th inning with a 1-run lead on 4 pitches, it's going to be mayhem.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he should be a closer at this point. We have no idea what could happen, and very likely what you suggest could happen in that instance, but. At this point, I have to think that he's now at least made himself eligible for much more high leverage moments, given that we're able to see that he's able to hold it together out there and that he has made some improvement to his mechanics to enable him to get the ball into the strike zone. And we have now ample evidence that when it's in the strike zone, oh boy, is it hard to hit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when he's good, and he was very good on Sunday, you're going to see a few strikeouts here and there. Not as many as you would expect from somebody who has his stuff, but you're going to see a ton of ground balls, and that's what he did. Right.
And when you have a bullpen that's built on depth, the way that Theo built it this offseason, part of that means that when you have a guy who appears to have something of a hot hand,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to start going to him more and more crucial situations until he shows that that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how you felt, but it was one for me. It was like I'm so happy to be proved wrong about how you pitched, because honestly, the week, if you remember the week before that game that they got snowed out against the Angels, he was supposed to start that game, and I remember thinking at the time when the game got canceled, like it's probably not such a bad thing that we didn't have to see a Chatwood start, and I mean, I can't imagine how good that must feel after dealing with the kind of year that he dealt with last year.
Right. Yeah, if you have anything resembling a heart, yeah, you have to be happy that something like that happens for him.
Right, especially considering how good of a teammate he has been supposedly, and how much everybody's pulling for him.
Yeah, so many guys stick up for him, and through the very worst time of his professional life last year. And it's we both know how cruel and unfair baseball is. So when you do have a moment where somebody's able to kind of reemerge from the shadows like that, yeah, it absolutely should be celebrated. He
almost reminds me a little bit of Edwin Jackson in terms of the way that felt. Like you know, it was frustrating to watch him pitch so poorly, but I never got the impression that he wasn't trying his absolute hardest and felt bad about how things were going.
Yeah, very much the same kind of deal. You know, you had multi-year free agent signing coming in and very, very popular with every one of his teammates. Everybody stuck up for him. Mm-hmm. And you knew that there was good stuff there, but just every time out, he had a pattern that you saw that when it started happening, you thought, yep, here comes disaster. And it happened just about every time. And then Edwin Jackson puts together a year like he put together for Oakland last year. And even from far away, you look at that and go, well, geez, good on you.
I feel like Edwin Jackson's like a LaTroy Hawkins guy where he's going to be pitching in like 2031, and we're going to be like, how is he still around?
Yeah. Yes. Maybe a bit less random screaming at umpires after giving up game-winning home runs than LaTroy Hawkins. But,
oh boy.
But yeah, I was there.
I feel like I should have to pay a fine every time I say that name on this podcast.
There are several names, honestly, that we'll call that the Todd Hundley rule, I guess.
That would be fun. I think Kevin and I should institute that, almost like a swear jar, where every time we mention the, like, no, God forbid we say Bartman, but if we said something that heinous, it would be like a sliding scale of like, okay, so you say Bartman, that's $10 in the swear jar. If you say Marmol, that's like 50 cents, because he wasn't that bad. But anyway,
these are the Cub Voldemorts, I think they should be called.
Yes.
The many they who must not be named.
Oh, too many over the years. What I was going to give myself credit for was that one of my predictions for this year was that I felt like we were going to start to see the Quintana that we thought we were trading for. And that has very much been the case the last two starts. And hopefully as you are listening to this, hopefully that will have been the case last night against a very good Dodgers team.
Yeah, this is going to be the test now the Dodgers are in town, because, oh boy, that's a lot of power and a lot of really good hitters back to back.
Ballinger is hitting like 500 right now.
Yeah. The thing is, the Dodgers tend to abuse right-handers more than lefties, I think. So they've got Quintana and Hamels and then maybe Lester lined up. So in terms of the way the pitching is set up for this series, that's the best way you could manage that. But again, there's still just so much talent there that it's really going to be tough. I think. Honestly, if we got, we both know what a decent level of Quintana is, and if we get that tonight against the Dodgers, I think I'll be fine with that, given that he's following, two starts that are as good as you can get from him.
Yeah, of course, he's not going to throw a shutout every time, but I think, for any of these guys, and whether it's Lester or Hamels or Hendricks, anyone, I'll take a quality start out of any of these guys any night of the week. I mean, I think the Cubs offense should be good enough that if you're losing 4-2, you probably shouldn't have won that game anyway. I think that anytime if Q goes out tonight against a very good Dodgers offense and gives up 3 runs in 6 innings, I'm not going to be mad about it.
No, not at all. And you shouldn't be against a team of that quality. And I think you should be able to trust this offense that on most nights you're going to be able to get a good, I mean, they've shown so far a good 4 or 5 runs just about every game. And occasionally, like every team, they'll get shut down, like when Zach Greinke's hitting every single corner and makes only one mistake the entire game. Yeah, that's going to happen. But for the most part, the offense has demonstrated they are trustworthy in a lineup where Chris Bryant is not hitting at all, and Anthony Rizzo has only started to show his true self over the past 3 or 4 games. So, at some points that when Hayward finally kind of regresses a little bit back from the insane all-star level he's playing at right now,
right?
That at some point Chris Bryant should kind of resemble the back of his baseball card too.
And Schwarber too. I mean, Schwarber has been really, really struggling.
Yeah, Schwarber's a bit more of a concern for me, just because part of it is that going into this spring training, you remember that he talked about going back to his old swing. That was the big change he made, which, in terms of comfort, I understand. But also that old swing was responsible for the first half of 2017, where he was completely lost.
Yeah.
And now that he's kind of back in that mode where he's swinging and missing it so much, I'm not sure how long it's going to take for him with that swing to get out of it right now, given what we know that's capable of at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I'm certainly no baseball swing or hitting expert. I do not resemble Chris Bryant's father in any way, shape, or form. But I talk much less about myself than he does, for instance.
But you do but you both talk about Ted Williams a lot, so that
is true. Yeah, if you're going to have a good foundation, you can't do better than old Teddy. But nonetheless, given what we know about Schwarber's history with that swing, I've got a bit of concern there. Unfortunately, because I adore Kyle.
No, I think we all do. I mean, do you feel less concerned about KB though?
Yes. Yeah, and until we see ample evidence that he is completely lost, I've got to assume that this is just his first real long slump, and at some point he's going to put this together and pull out of it. There's just too much really, really great evidence of his hitting capability to say that he's just done right now at what, 27, 28?
Yeah, so. No, there's no way. I mean, and maybe he doesn't break out of it in a day or in a week, but I think he'll start to come around. Hopefully, not that I wouldn't love another full house game like he had against Cincinnati, the 3 homer 2 double game.
Yeah, that's a good way to come out of it. But yeah, my only real concern with Bryant is that this is the first real extended struggle period he's had almost since he's been drafted. You remember when he was coming up through the minor leagues, one of the things that Theo and Jed were saying was that they hoped at some point in the minor leagues he would have a long slump, just so he could kind of get that muscle memory of, this is how I endure it, this is how I get out of it. And he was just too good for every single level, so he couldn't really develop that.
Yeah, and I assume you probably watched all of those off-season videos the Cubs put together. But in that one where he's talking about his off-season, he mentions it was the ultimate fairy tale experience of literally going from college player of the year to minor league player of the year to rookie of the year to MVP and winning a World Series in the process. It's not that he doesn't know how to deal with adversity, but not a lot had gone wrong.
Right.
Until last year. Yeah.
And I just getting the sense from the way he talks about himself when he's going poorly that I think he's also super hard on himself when he's not hitting.
Yeah. So, I think I saw a quote about that, or Maddon was mentioning, he can see how much Bryant is, overthinking every plate appearance when he comes back to the dugout. And even that kind of wonky wind-assisted 2-run double, you could tell how frustrated he was when he popped that up.
Yeah, because he knows who he's capable of being. And I think that when he's not that, and this is going to sound way too highfalutin, but it's almost like he doesn't know who he is if he's not hitting, because that's so wedded to his conception of himself.
Yeah.
At that point, that all he knows is that level of success, and it's an existential crisis for poor KB.
Well, I think with him maybe it'll be a small thing that helps break him out of it, because I don't have the numbers in front of me to back this up, but it seems to me that to this point in the season, KB has had a 2018 Schwarber-like inability to do anything with runners in scoring position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure that is frustrating him more than anything. I mean, if he's striking out with nobody on, so be it. But when he's got a chance to drive people in, especially with less than 2 outs, and he's not doing it, he's done that his entire life. So to not do it now, he's probably driving himself crazy, wondering what he's doing wrong.
Absolutely, yes. And he knows that's his job on the team. He's part of that middle of the order. That's what they're tasked to do. I think to add to that point, I don't know. I don't have, again, the figures in front of me, but I think Joe Sheehan has kind of done a little bit of a dive into Bryant, and he's seeing a lot more breaking balls in general than he's ever seen at any point in his career this year. So
interesting.
So it's not just a matter of him figuring out timing, but it's also figuring out timing while being pitched in a way that's different than anything you've seen before to this point.
Right.
So to that end, I can understand why it's lasted so long, and I can understand why that would also play havoc with your mind. I really think it's just a matter of getting him kind of mentally back into some kind of comfort zone, and then the rest of it's going to follow.
Yeah, and I think, you and I know this, and every Cub fan knows this, and hopefully KB knows this about himself, but he has the talent to just all of a sudden, and maybe it's not against the Dodgers, but come out sometime soon and have a series where he goes 8 for 11.
Yeah. Well, he's talked about, when talking about Tommy La Stella, to go back to that topic for a second, he had a quote in one of the stories when the Angels came back to Wrigley that one of his favorite things about La Stella was that he was kind of one of the designated guys who would pump up guys like Chris Bryant. That Bryant said something along the lines of, La Stella would occasionally just out of the blue say, I'm amazed at what you're able to do on a baseball field, and you should remember how good you are. And Bryant's evaluation of that was something like, yeah, you have no idea how much I need to hear that on a regular basis, that you think it's that I'm going along and everything is okay, but need to hear that validation. Where was I going with this?
No, I think that's huge, and I'm sure you've seen it too. I'm forgetting what the guy's name is on the Cubs, who's like I don't know what his official job title is, but you've seen the thing where they like stand around in a circle before the game, and he'll say like, everybody say something that they like about Ben Zobrist, and they all go, yeah.
That's I again,
Buss or whatever, Bussy, something like that.
Yeah, Tim Buss. Yeah, the strength and conditioning coach. You're right, and that's another vital part to kind of keeping things light and making sure that that they don't let the pressure overcome the pleasure of playing baseball. And I guess where I was trying to go with that is that Chris Bryant needs a Mufasa. That he needs somebody to appear in the clouds and just do the "remember who you are" moment.
Maybe you can do it. I think you got the voice for it.
If the Cubs want to employ me for that, I am available. So.
Oh, boy. I think they should.
Yes. Unfortunately, part of that would also mean that there would be certain guys where I'd be in the middle of giving them a Mufasa and then realize that, oh, yeah, I'm trying to tell Tyler Chatwood to remember who you are. No, Tyler, forget everything about who you are.
Exactly.
You
have to pick and choose who to tell to remember who they are. So real quick before I let you go, Kevin and I usually do this, but give me a prediction for the next week of games. So basically that means 3 at home against the Dodgers and then 3 at the Diamondbacks.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to say 3-3 on that.
I think that's fair. The Cubs always have a hard time playing in Arizona for whatever reason.
Yeah. Arizona is one of their very worst road parks to play in. I think one of these is going to be a good series, but honestly, it's a coin flip to me which one it could be, because I could see either one being one of those where you just go, ugh, just get through this with one and then move on to the next. So
yeah, I'll go with the slightly more optimistic 4-2. I think it's possible that the Cubs can win 2 of 3 in both series, or sweep one and maybe struggle a little bit in the other.
Yeah, I could certainly see that happening as well.
And then it's on to Seattle, which will be cool to see the Cubs play in Safeco. I don't remember the last time they were out there.
It was back when they were awful, I think. So
yes,
maybe like a 2012, 2013-ish, something like that. I think one of my college friends who used to live in Seattle went to those games with his fiance, and they established a bet that whichever team ended up losing would end up they'd have to pay the other, something like it was a reverse bet based on how terrible both teams were at the time. So.
Well, hopefully it'll go better for the Cubs now than it did then. I don't even know what happened, but I assume they lost.
I say whoever wins keeps custody of Eddie Vedder. How about that?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Yes.
I think that's the stakes are pretty high if we're doing that. All right, cool. So Ken, people can follow you. Is it at Ken_Schultz? Is that right? On Twitter?
At Ken Schultz _
Okay, got you. Gotcha. Okay.
Switch your at Ken Thin Guy on Instagram as well. So
sweet. And you can follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram. Email us at awaygamespodcast@gmail.com. Throw us a nice rating on iTunes if you have not done so. We would very much appreciate it. And I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Let's go win some more games, shall we?
Absolutely, yes. It's good to talk to you, my friend.
Yeah, you too.